David Turner realized he was still alive, but only out of habit. The sun had barely risen over the hills of Maine, and he was already on the porch, standing still, staring at the axe resting on the stump that promised to be used tomorrow. The blade was rusted. The handle, worn smooth by time, seemed to plead for attention. And in a way, so did he. For 25 years, David woke up at 5:47 a.m. every single day. Same time, same coffee, same walk to the furniture factory where he had spent half his life. Now retired, the clock still ticked the same hour, but no one called. The silence was constant, torturous, painful. The wind rustled through the trees, dragging dry leaves that struck the porch. A sound that once went unnoticed now seemed to mock him. Margaret had been gone for 3 years. Cancer had arrived fast, ruthless, without warning. Ryan, his son, lived in Chicago. Sporadic phone calls, measured words. "Dad, you need to find something to do," he said. David didn't need something to do. He needed something to feel. The old routine felt like a distant memory. Every object in the kitchen, the coffee maker, Margaret's favorite mug, the coffee-stained towel, was a reminder of a life he no longer knew how to live. He tried everything: online courses, philosophy books, gardening groups, plans to renovate the barn. Everything ended the same way. "I'm not ready yet." He told himself he was sharpening the axe, but deep down he knew he was only delaying the forest, and each lost day was another splinter chipped from his own life. That morning, something changed. Footsteps along the path bordering the woods behind the house. Rare here. David put on his coat, feeling the cold bite his skin, and crossed the lawn. The air smelled of wet earth, burned wood, and moss. It was the scent of life he had ignored for so long. A man appeared on the path, leaning on a wooden cane. Gray hair, thick beard, eyes unnervingly sharp for his age. As he approached, he smiled. "Nice axe," he said, nodding toward it. "But it looks like it hasn't cut anything in a while." David looked at the rusty blade. "I'm still getting ready," he replied, hesitant. The old man furrowed his brow, studying him. "Getting ready for what?" David swallowed. "To start using it again." The man chuckled, a short, deep, almost pitying laugh. "Ah, the eternal preparation, a refuge for those afraid to begin. Be careful, my friend. Sometimes those who spend a lifetime sharpening the axe forget that the forest doesn't wait forever." Before David could answer, the man walked away, disappearing into the trees. David stood there, feeling the weight of those words sink into his chest. That night, he tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. The stranger's words echoed, "The forest doesn't wait forever." The wind rattled the window, bringing the chill inside as if the world itself was reminding him time was passing. He got up before sunrise, put on his coat, and headed to the shed. The smell of wood and old oil hit him like a nostalgic perfume. The axe was there, motionless, waiting. He picked it up carefully, ran his fingers over the blade. Still dull, but something inside him stirred, something that had been asleep for years. First swing, weak, almost useless. Second, better, but still timid. Third, the sharp crack echoed across the yard. The stump split, and David felt the pulse of life return. Back in the house, exhausted, he found something new on the table. A small glass hourglass. The sand fell slowly, golden, serene. At the bottom, faint letters were engraved. "Don't wait until you're ready." David looked around. No one. The door was closed.
The wind in the trees cast dancing shadows across the walls. It was just him, the axe, the hourglass, and the echo of his choices. For the first time, he felt both discomfort and excitement. A calling, a reminder that sharpening is safe, but cutting is living. He knew something was about to change, and this time, it wouldn't just be practice, it would be the beginning of the forest.
Morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen slats, spilling over the hourglass. Each grain of sand fell slow, deliberate. David watched, almost hypnotized. The warning from the night before echoed in his mind. Don't wait until you're ready. His coffee had brewed a little too long, giving off a faint burnt aroma. The scent of wood mixed with the drink. Familiar, comforting, cruel. Memories rose in waves. Margaret laughing in the kitchen, Ryan racing to school. A life once full of motion and purpose. Now, all that remained was an echo of something he had abandoned. David drew a deep breath. It was time to do more than watch. Time to feel every memory, every choice, every failure, and finally confront what he had left behind. He decided to walk the trail behind the house. Winter had passed, and the damp scent of the forest blended with the crunch of dry leaves underfoot. Each step reminded him of his youth, running, adventures, freedom. Adulthood had been different. Bills, routines, plans, expectations. He had never noticed how fast time passed until he realized every lost moment was irretrievable. Along the path, he ran into Helen, a longtime neighbor and friend. Her old Labrador seemed to know every secret of the forest. "Morning, David," she said, her smile masking years of frustration. "Morning, Helen," he replied, surprised by the encounter. She studied him. "Looks like you finally woke up." David frowned. "Woke up from what?" "The sleep we call life," she said calmly. "Good to see you moving, thinking again." He smiled, bittersweet. She was right. He hadn't slept from exhaustion. He had slept from fear. Fear of mistakes. Fear of swinging the axe and realizing he no longer knew how to walk forward. As he walked home, he thought of the days passed in inaction. The bosses who complained about his slow pace. The mother-in-law who always advised patience but never forgave mistakes. His late wife, whose death had been sudden, leaving lessons unheeded. An old piece of advice came to mind. See what you want, not what prevents you. David repeated it to himself. Seeing what you want takes courage, and he wasn't sure he was ready to pay the true price. Desire without awareness becomes greed. Every choice comes with a cost. He returned to the shed, picked up the axe, felt its weight. It wasn't just metal. It was a mirror of his life. Later, Ryan called. "Dad, what are you up to?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "Just walking, breathing, thinking," David said, measuring every word. His son sighed. "You always taught me never to wait, but I think you forgot to follow your own advice." David fell silent. The remark didn't sting. It reminded him of responsibility. Caring for those around you isn't easy when gratitude exists. The real test is to keep serving when you're frustrated, tired, or discouraged. He remembered Helen, his conversations with Ryan, Margaret's memory. Loyalty and attention weren't simple, but they were necessary. David knew he needed to be more than an observer. He needed to act. By late afternoon, he began organizing the shed. Old tools, the smell of wood, sunlight streaming through the window.
It all gained meaning. Every simple action became ritual. Prepping the blade, cleaning sawdust, measuring the stump. Mechanical motion became meditation. He realized work isn't just cutting wood. It's cutting hesitation and doubt. The hourglass remained on the table. He picked it up, flipped it, watched the sand fall. A silent reminder. Every lost second is gone forever. Time is rigid, merciless, and now he was finally ready to listen. On the way back, the sky burned with orange and purple hues. The trail, once simple, now seemed like a map of David's life. Every curve marked an obstacle, every tree a choice left behind. The forest spoke in silence, and he began to listen. David realized he could no longer postpone. Courage wouldn't appear on its own. Action was required, even if imperfect, even if painful. He looked at the axe, the shed, the hourglass. Everything seemed to conspire to remind him, it's not enough to sharpen, you must cut. The day ended with David sitting on the porch watching the forest. The cold air touched his face. His heart beat faster than it had in years. Fear and excitement intertwined. The turning point hadn't arrived yet, but the ground had been prepared.
David woke before the sun again, but this time the air felt different, denser, more urgent. Something inside him shifted, insistent, today is the day. The axe rested against the stump as always, but he didn't hesitate. He gripped it firmly. The handle vibrated in his hands, transmitting a strength he hadn't felt in years. As he walked down the trail, every detail seemed amplified. Light filtering through the trees created patterns on the ground. Birdsong rang louder than usual. The wind felt stronger. It was as if the entire forest was watching, waiting. Suddenly, footsteps echoed behind him. David turned. The old man from the trail was there, leaning on his cane. "I see you finally decided to cut," he said, a smile blending approval with challenge. David frowned. "But you disappeared. Why are you back?" "Sometimes those who need a push don't realize they're already running on their own," the man replied. "And me?" David asked. "Do you think you're ready?" the man said. "Ready doesn't exist. Only action exists." David swallowed hard. The weight of all those years of postponing choices, postponing cuts, postponing life itself crashed down on him. Every lost day, every ignored fear, every wasted opportunity. When he reached the clearing, a massive stump blocked the path. It wasn't just wood. It symbolized everything he had left behind: mistakes, regrets, chances, relationships. The axe felt heavier than ever. David exhaled. Sweat ran down his face, mingling with the mud underfoot. And then he understood he couldn't do this alone. Ryan's voice echoed in his memory. "You always taught me never to wait." Every swing of the axe wasn't just cutting wood, it was cutting fear, guilt, uncertainty. Every flying splinter represented a piece of himself being freed. While he worked, he felt something in his backpack, the hourglass. Still there, the last grains of sand fell slowly. Don't wait until you're ready. The stump resisted. Each strike seemed futile. David began to doubt himself. Maybe he wasn't capable. Maybe he had waited too long. Then something unexpected happened. Ryan appeared on the trail. The boy was quiet, but his gaze carried respect, concern,
and silent strength. "Dad, I knew you could do it," he said. David swallowed. It wasn't praise. It was a challenge and love. The old man watched from afar, silent. He didn't intervene. He only observed. David realized the turning point doesn't come from outside. It comes from within, from the courage to face what you've always avoided, to take responsibility, to confront your own life. With each strike, the stump gave way a little more. The physical effort turned into mental clarity. Fear began to fade. He finally understood that the forest wouldn't wait for him. But now he could act before time ran out. When the stump finally split completely, something inside him changed. The sound echoed across the clearing like a bell of freedom. The old man stepped closer. "It's not the axe, not the forest. It's you. Always has been you." David looked at Ryan, the hourglass, the broken stump. The weight of the years felt lighter. The first step had been taken. The turning point doesn't solve everything, but it creates space for real transformation. After a few minutes, David sat on the broken stump. Sweat and mud mingled. His heart raced, yet he felt peace. The old man approached again, silent, just watching. David reflected. Every action that day carried 3 lessons he would take years to fully understand. Taking responsibility isn't the same as punishing yourself. Culture and habits shape behavior, but it takes courage to challenge them. Time waits for no one. Action is what transforms fear into accomplishment. He looked at Ryan. The boy smiled silently, leaning against a tree. He felt empathy and humility simultaneously. He didn't need to prove anything to anyone, but he needed to prove it to himself. The sun dipped, painting the sky in oranges and purples. David inhaled deeply. The broken stump, the sweat, the axe, the hourglass, all spoke the same truth. Action transforms life. Fear delays destiny. He knew the true challenge was still ahead, but now he had clarity. It's not about being ready, it's about beginning. And in that moment, he felt something he hadn't felt in decades: hope. The forest watched in silence, and he was finally ready to listen.
The sun was still hidden behind the trees when David returned to the shed. The turning point stump was no longer whole. The smell of freshly cut wood filled the air. Each splinter, each fragment seemed to whisper, "You can." The axe, now clean and sharp, rested on the workbench. David looked at it, weighed down by reflection. He didn't need to prove anything to anyone, but he needed to prove to himself that he could face life, make difficult decisions, and not run away. Helen appeared with her dog, as if sensing his need. "I see you're moving," she said without preamble. David nodded. "More than that, I started cutting." She glanced around the clearing. "It's a good start, but cutting wood isn't the end, it's just the beginning." David felt the weight of her words. The real challenge wasn't physical, it was internal. Courage, empathy, humility. Facing fear, acknowledging mistakes, and continuing anyway. He looked at the hourglass. Few grains of sand remained. Time was passing, relentless. David took a deep breath. It was time to apply everything he had learned. Every decision, every action, every memory. Ryan appeared again. "Dad, are you ready for this?" he asked, meeting his father's eyes. David smiled. "There's no such thing as ready, only doing." And then the real challenge arrived. The factory, the legacy of years, a project neglected for decades. David had planned to restore one of the factory's old tables, but uncertainty always froze him. Now with the axe in hand and the stump cut, it was time to act. He started small, organizing the space, measuring the wood, deciding what needed to be done first. Each action carried symbolism. The axe cut not just wood, but internal doubts. The hourglass reminded him time waits for no indecision. The forest watched silently, witnessing his transformation. Helen returned again, this time with a cup of coffee in a simple styrofoam cup. David noticed the contrast. Plain, practical, nothing fancy, nothing to impress. This is for you, for what you really need, not to appear something you're not. David smiled, understanding the metaphor. Humility isn't shrinking yourself, it's knowing your value and acting accordingly. He held the cup, felt the warmth, and realized he didn't need anyone's approval. His own effort and choices were enough. Physical work ended, but the true test was ahead: empathy and leadership. Ryan, Helen, even former colleagues looked to him, expecting direction. David understood leadership wasn't about admiration. It was serving, guiding, correcting, and staying steady. He began delegating, patiently explaining each task, not with arrogance, not in haste, but with clarity. And he felt something powerful. Each well-executed act of leadership strengthened his inner authority, not his ego. As the day went on, David realized empathy was both a remedy and a challenge. He could understand others without erasing himself. He could listen, guide, support without compromising decisions. A delicate balance, but essential. When night fell, David finally allowed himself to sit. The empty hourglass reminded him time waits for no one, but he had done everything he could at the right moment. The stump cut, the project begun, the relationships carefully tended. He looked at Ryan. "Are you proud of me?" he asked. His son smiled silently, expression full of trust and approval. David realized he no longer needed external validation. True recognition comes from within, from effort, courage, and consistent action. The old man from the trail appeared one last time, watching from a distance. David felt no need for words. His gaze said it all. "You found your path, now keep going." David closed his eyes, breathed deeply, and smiled. The axe rested nearby, the styrofoam cup still warm, the hourglass empty. The forest, silent, had witnessed the transformation. He knew challenges remained, but the foundation was set. The climax wasn't just cutting wood, leading, or repairing relationships. It was understanding that every action, every choice, every second matters, and that true courage arises when you face fear, doubt, and responsibility, even alone. In that moment, David felt peace. Not the peace of total victory, but the peace of someone who decided to truly live without delays or excuses. He had crossed the turning point, faced his inner demons, and learned that leadership, empathy, and humility aren't concepts. They're demanding, solitary daily practices. And finally, he understood, loving work, caring for people, and honoring your own time is the price of true freedom. Night fell on the forest. David, sitting in the shed, gazed at the starry sky. He knew the next step would come, and now he was ready to keep cutting, living, and leading with purpose.
Morning sunlight bathed the forest in golden tones. David breathed deeply, feeling the cold, damp air fill his lungs. The clearing was silent, but not empty. Every tree seemed to remind him of what he had gained. Not the cut wood or projects begun, but the courage to face his own life. The axe rested beside the shed, clean and gleaming. The empty hourglass remained on the table, silent witness to the time he had finally begun to value. The styrofoam cup from the day before sat on the bench, now cold, but full of meaning. Humility, he realized, isn't shrinking yourself. It's knowing your worth and acting accordingly. Ryan appeared on the trail, carrying a backpack of books.
"Dad, I thought I'd spend the day here with you," he said, looking at the clearing. David smiled. "Perfect. Let's work together." As they cut wood for new projects, David recognized something vital. Leadership isn't a title nor a position. It's a daily responsibility, choosing to serve others even without recognition, teaching, supporting, yet maintaining your own standards and integrity. Helen arrived with cookies and hot coffee. "This feels better," she said. "You seem at peace." David nodded. "More than ever. I finally realized work isn't just a task. It's an opportunity to honor time, people, and life itself." The old man from the trail appeared again, this time unhurried. He said, "I see you've understood the lesson," with a discreet smile. David nodded, feeling quiet gratitude. It wasn't words but actions that transform. It wasn't about sharpening the axe. It was about using it at the right time with purpose. Throughout the day, David felt the deep effect of his choices. Every action measured, deliberate. Every interaction with Ryan or Helen carried attention and empathy. He realized empathy isn't accepting everything, but understanding without erasing yourself. True humility seeks no applause. It finds internal balance. Watching Ryan organize the freshly cut wood, David remembered his son's words, "You always taught me never to wait." He smiled. It wasn't just a lesson for Ryan, it was a lesson for him too. Night fell on the clearing. The starry sky reflected in every leaf, every stump, every detail he had ignored for years. David sat on the cut stump, gazing at the sky, reflecting on the journey. He understood that loving work is a right, but loving without boundaries turns passion into dependency. It's easy to confuse dedication with identity. He had done that before. Years of purposeless routine, postponing real life. Now he knew love for your work needs clear limits. It strengthens life when balanced, destroys when consuming. David remembered the stump, the hourglass, and the styrofoam cup. Each was a living metaphor. The axe, courage, action, facing fear. The hourglass, time, urgency, awareness of now. The cup, humility, simplicity, authenticity. He smiled, realizing life is a sequence of these symbols. It's not merely about survival or accumulation of achievements. It's about acting with purpose, serving with attention, and valuing time and people. David walked to the edge of the clearing. The forest was calm. He could hear every detail: wind in the leaves, a bird calling in the distance, a branch snapping. Everything seemed in sync with his heart. He finally felt part of the flow of life, not just a spectator. Ryan approached, resting a hand on his father's shoulder. "Dad, thanks for not waiting any longer." David smiled, eyes glistening. "Thank you for reminding me to live." Helen joined them, carrying lanterns and coffee. "I think it's going to be a good night," she said. David nodded, feeling the weight of the past lift and the lightness of a new life arise. As they walked together, David reflected. A true leader isn't the one who inspires with words alone. It's the one who stands firm when no one else believes. The one who faces loneliness, takes risks, and endures constant criticism. The one who speaks and acts with purpose, even when it's uncomfortable. He realized he had often mistaken waiting until you're ready for prudence. In truth, it was fear disguised as wisdom. Now he knew action, even imperfect, is worth more than waiting forever. The clearing was no longer just a physical space. It was a symbol of transformation. David felt peace, not the peace of everything solved, but the peace of someone who decided to live fully, without excuses, without delays. Work, family, leadership, time,
all made sense in this balance. The empty hourglass reminded him time doesn't wait, but he had already learned. Every second used with purpose transforms life. The forest, the axe, the styrofoam cup, and the hourglass, all symbols of a simple, powerful truth. Living with awareness, courage, and empathy is the greatest legacy one can leave. As night deepened, David looked at Ryan and Helen. "Shall we head home?" he asked. They nodded. David inhaled deeply, feeling each step, each choice, each second as a gift. He finally understood the ending isn't the end. It's the continuation of courage, attention, love, and true leadership. And in that moment, David Turner felt complete. Not because life was perfect, but because he had finally learned to truly live, and knew every new dawn would bring fresh opportunities to act with purpose, empathy, and humility. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying away the last traces of fear and doubt. And David smiled, ready for whatever came next, knowing the greatest gift you can give yourself is to begin, again and again if needed.